think that we're live. All right, everyone, it's 10 o'clock, and this video hopefully is going to stay up. I can't really tell exactly if it is working, but I think it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started as if everything is going according to plan, although as Carol showed, things do not always go as we expect, and so if there are any mistakes and I need to re-upload, I'll be sure to do that as soon as possible. But it's just now 10 o'clock. I'll give maybe a little bit more time for people to join. Let's see, Todd and Beth are here, and Lewis. All right, it's working. It's working. Also, everyone, welcome to my apartment. This is where I live. Kim! Look, that's where I sleep. That's my bookshelf. That's Michael Jordan. This is very embarrassing. Let's see. Really, I'm not sure how long to wait for people to get on. This is a mug I made in middle or high school, Lord of the Rings. For all my nerds out there, plenty of time to watch all the movies today. You might be able to do it today. Okay, so I want to start, Michael Jordan. I want to start kind of by naming how I hope my reflections will go. So I am not any of our other staff, whom I love, gifted and talented beyond any ability to imitate Jim and Kathy and Carol and Lauren and Renee. You know, each of us have an identity, I guess, as your pastors that whether we like it or not has been crafted in our time with you all. And so for me, I just want to be myself on these reflections that I'm offering. And I also want to, be sure to name that while this is primarily for you, the people of Highland, I want it to be applicable to other people as well. And so I know many people who are maybe not religious or not Christian or who have had bad experiences with the church. I want some of my messages, some part of them, to connect with them. For those who are not affiliated with churches at all and just simply don't maintain any sort of religious belief or connection to the church, I want to be able to connect with those people. I want to be able to connect with people in recovery, with people who are struggling with various kinds of mental struggles, anxiety, depression, all those things, and more. So I really want this to be for you, Highland, but I also want this to be for other people, so that if they come across this, that they'll get a sense of, yes, we are a progressive Baptist church, but we are not just for people like you and me. So I want to have some kind of message that carries forward to other people wherever they are in life. But, okay, with all of that being said, so that means like when I do this stuff, it's not going to be fancy. I'm obviously, well, maybe I'll wear a robe or something, but next time. But for now, it's just going to be thoughts with me in my everything room. I live in a studio apartment about a mile from the church, and that is where this will be coming from. So now, live from Perry's everything room and the table from my family that I eat everything on and I read at and I look at the computer at and I sit and think at. So that's where this is coming from, with a young Michael Jordan in the background. On that poster is a close too high if he soars with his own wings, which doesn't seem like the most Christian message. So you can see, like, even in the physical space I'm in, I'm a contradictory person. So what I would like to think about this morning with you all is that for many of us, fear and isolation are like the worst. And we can do all sorts of things, to ourselves that make fear and isolation kind of daily experiences. Or some of us, it's kind of like like we don't get to decide. the fear part, or the anxiety part, or the depression part, or the worry, or those kind of things. But I think all of us can share right now, whether you've been diagnosed with something or not, that these are uncertain times, and that we kind of are sharing and the anxiety that comes from the unknown, from kind of the avalanche of things on a day-to-day basis. I've been overwhelmed by the rate at which news has changed. So on a day-to-day basis, just reality-altering news coming, and it's not done yet. And so it can be stressful to think even about what life is going to look like in the next, week, or the next day, the next months, because we really can't project what is exactly going to happen, but with a degree of certainty, we can say that it's going to be different. And so for me, what I have been trying to do is figure out, which might sound strange, as I've been trying to figure out what a spiritual life looks like in this particular time. So it's, to come from one of your ministers, I'll just tell you in all honesty, I'm working on being more reverent, even as a reverend. I'm working on praying more. I'm working on reading the Bible more. All that stuff that I think people might assume is, yeah, that guy's an associate pastor. He does that stuff all the time. I was like, well, I try, but I'm still trying to get better at it. And so one spiritual practice that is helpful for me is trying to live in gratitude through prayer and through intentional thinking or mindfulness. And for me, what that does is that keeps me rooted, in right now. And that helps me not look too far into the past or too far into the present, both of which cause me to kind of spiral if I'm not careful. And so there is something to living in gratitude every day, but that's different when things are like they are now. I think we'd all admit that there are times when it's easy to live in gratitude and just, things are coming, much more simply or clearly, that we can be like, I'm thankful for that, I'm thankful for that, I'm thankful for that. And for many of us, that's not always the case, whether it be due to chronic conditions or illness or family situations or financial insecurity, which, for a lot of people actually was before this coronavirus and now is just apocalyptic in nature. Basically it's not always the case that it is easy to find gratitude and to live in gratitude, which is why it's a good practice, because it kind of pushes back against life when it's difficult. If we search for gratitude in that, it really can change the way that we experience even the most difficult of circumstances. And so I'm going to share with you all just two things after rambling so far. I'm going to share with you two things that are meaningful for me and that I return to again and again. And I will try to, after the video is posted, post some things in the comments and give you an opportunity to respond. I can't really see if there are comments coming. I can't really see those right now. But when I was in a difficult stretch, I want to say, let's see when this was first published. It might have been 2014 or 15. But I heard this discussion on the podcast On Being with Krista Tippett, and it was a panel discussion on happiness. Okay, so it came out September 25th of 2014, and it was a panel discussion at Emory University on the subject of happiness. And it was a panel discussion that was moderated by Krista Tippett, but it included His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who was the chief rabbi of United Hebrew Congregations in the British Commonwealth for 22 years, Dr. Syed Hussein Nasir. I'm not the best at that pronunciation, and I apologize for any mistakes, but he is professor of Islamic Studies at George Washington University, and then Bishop Catherine Shorey, the 26th presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church in America, who happens to hold a doctorate in oceanography. So basically, the subject was happiness. And so there was this wonderful panel discussion on happiness between these scholars and religious figures, and it's worth listening to the whole thing. But speaking from his own tradition, Jonathan Sacks brought up a story that is familiar to us as Christians as well from Genesis. And it's the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel. And so he says this in that interview, and he's talking about what it means to be a Jewish person. And so he says the definition of a Jew, Israel, is, as it says in Genesis, one who struggles, wrestles with God and with humanity, and prevails. And Jacob says something very profound to the angel. He says, I will not let you go until you bless me. And that is how I feel about suffering. When something bad happens, I will not let go of that bad thing until I have discovered the blessing that lies within it. And Rabbi Sacks goes on to talk about some difficult periods of mourning in his lifetime, where he was throttled by life and yet demanded blessing from his experiences and from the period that he was in, even amidst struggle, demanding blessing from it. And so I want to read you the actual passage from Genesis, which is part of the Genesis story, which includes a lot of dudes doing a lot of stuff, and ways that if we're not careful about how we read it, we can kind of enshrine some not good things, such as patriarchy and sexism and slavery and like all that other stuff. But at Highland, we really reclaim sacred texts as deeply human and try to find in them what is universal. And for me, this is one of those stories that does that. And so there's some intricacies here that if you want to go look and see in Genesis what came before and after, it'll help you make sense of that. I don't want to do all of that right now. I just want to read you this passage, which comes from Genesis 32. And so this is talking about Jacob. That same night he got up and he took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, Let me go, for the day is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. So he said to him, What is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then the man said, You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans, and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, Please tell me your name. But he said, Why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. That's one of my favorite passages for the reasons I've described so far, and it's really one of the ones that's rooting me day to day now, is that I can't say with certainty what is going to happen. I can't say with certainty, how I'm going to be tomorrow. But for today, what is good for me is to, by living in gratitude, search for blessing even amidst everything that is going on. And that's advice that can be easier to follow for some than others. And I would never give that advice to someone irresponsibly. Like, I'm not going to show up in a hospital room and tell someone, you should demand blessing out of this suffering you're going through. I don't mean that. But I do mean that it is a spiritual practice that I have found that I'm still working at, but through cultivating it mindfully really has changed my capacity to weather storms as they come. And so what I would like to offer is an opportunity for you to respond in the comments, or if you want to repost on your own Facebook page, and encourage others to share likewise. Is my question is, what are you doing in this time, knowing that some of our community were fairly socially isolated before this began. Some are home with youth and children and a full household, and now all of a sudden are teachers and therapists and parents and cooks and home theaters and all that kind of stuff, in some of our households, and a wide variety of others. So I know that it'll look different for everyone, but my question is, as you think about what it means to live in gratitude, to demand blessing out of your present circumstances, how are you doing that? And what are you finding to be true? I'll tell you, for me, one thing that I have begun, it's pretty embarrassing. I told Carol, but during Lent, I've been praying in the morning, like actually getting on my knees and praying, which is like anti everything about me. But I have been doing that because I realized that I needed to try something different. And when I pray for all sorts of different things, but the thing that I pray most is gratitude, thankfulness for different people that I know and those that I don't know, for all sorts of things as they come to me. And so that's the question that I want to leave you all with. I will end this live broadcast now with the question, how are you finding gratitude in this season of physical distance as we try to maintain social connection? What does a spiritual life look like for you, given that our physical space has been taken away from us? A big part of my spiritual life is actually just showing up and being at church, and we don't have that. And so it would be wonderful to hear, in place of that, how are you finding blessing and demanding blessing, even in this strange time that we are living in. So thank you to all who have joined us this morning. I hope that this worked. But worst case scenario, I will be like Carol and have to repost it again. But love to each of you, and I hope that today you are able to find blessing somewhere. Hope you have a wonderful day.